What's the password for today? You guys want to know the password? I don't remember. All right. Okay, Telnet. All right, good. Password for today is Telnet. All right, so you guys had this WordPress thing. You don't want to work on it anymore, right? I started grading it, and I was having issues with a mobile-friendly validator, and I haven't really resolved those issues to my satisfaction, so I haven't put any grades in for you yet. There's two different mobile-friendly validators. There's the Google one that I used on one of the previous homeworks, and it seemed to be doing all right, but then it was giving, it'll just randomly, I mean, some people were seeing this too, it'll randomly sometimes tell you there's a problem and not tell you there's a problem, and I haven't really looked into that. And then there's the other one, the W3C has one, and it has a lot more requirements. So if I put just one of our pages in there, it'll complain about quite a bit more, and I've resolved some of those complaints, but not all of them. So there's two things it's still complaining about, and so I want to get that resolved before continuing on. And so I'll probably end up grading the WordPress one and just kind of shrinking it and making sure that it doesn't look too bad, but not running it through the validator. And then figure out, I want to give you a template that, okay, these are the things it's complaining about, and this is how to make it pass, but I haven't resolved all of them. But so what I have so far is this. So this, I'm just going to keep track here of, so these are things that you need to put in there to get it to pass the various validators. You have the doc type, and in the doc type we've been saying HTML, but then it wants to know what particular variant, and so here's one of them that actually, so this is a link to the description, official description of XHTML 1.1, which is whatever. I don't know, that'll come up. All right, so that's one. Oh, now we're waiting. Come on. Please. Switch. Okay, so that's one of them, and then one of the validators was suggesting that the HTML tag should also have a link in there, and then we've seen this asking for the character set. So what is the character set? Well, yeah, it says UTF-8, but what does that mean? Unicode, right, but what does it mean? It's just a rule for going from the binary. So what's your file actually in memory or on your hard drive or whatever? Now it's back. We'll go over here. I think it's back. So when your browser gets a file, it's not getting A, B, C, D, E, F, G, it's getting binary, right? And so the character set says the rules for this binary string is B, this binary string is C. That's the character set. So that's defined, and you could use something different than this. You could use Unicode or whatever. There's other ones. You can find names like UTF-7, UTF-8, Unicode, whatever. Okay, so that's one thing that that also needs to be added. If you don't give a character set, your computer, our computers, okay, so my computers always assume UTF-8. I don't know what they are in other countries. Maybe it varies by country where your computer came from, what it assumes the character set is, or maybe they always assume UTF-8. If you're doing XHTML, so if I have this as my thing, then so like this meta tag doesn't have an end tag. You don't have begin meta, end meta. It's just meta. So in XHTML, the rules for that wants to have a slash there. Like also for the link tag, also for the input tag. Those are ones that don't have end. So if it's going to verify as according to this, it's going to say to put these little slashes in. Another one of them complained about was the CSS. So the CSS file that I have for this. So it's also going to need to know the character set for the CSS file. So you can put that at the top. And that will get rid of some error. But it's not, I don't have all the errors gone yet. All right, but I'll update this, and I think there's a note about that. Is there a note about this? All possible validators that could ever exist. That's the goal. All right, another thing, so I haven't graded homework 4 yet. You could still fix something. For now, if I don't figure something out with these mobile validators, I won't run them. I'll just shrink your window. Wherever my shrink button is, I'll shrink. That's not that window. I will shrink. All right, I'll shrink, and as long as it still looks okay, then I'll call that fine. It still has to pass the HTML and the CSS. Don't have inline style. I'll search for that. It's easy enough for me to just write a script to search for inline style. So I will search for, there should be nowhere in your code that you have basically style, actually, probably, unless you have that, you're writing about style. You shouldn't have style or style equals or whatever. Put it in your CSS. Okay, so that I'll make that you get a 0 to make you not do it. You can still fix that. I won't look at this until tomorrow at the earliest, more likely Monday or Tuesday. Okay, and then besides that, you have the PHP. Before we get to that, questions about homework 4 or any of this kind of stuff?
Can you extend the deadline for homework 6?
Homework 6? So, okay, let's talk about these. So homework 5 was the easy one. You just copy and paste my file. And does somebody have an example that they want to show the class that's done, that you think is done? Anybody? 34. You want us to look at yours because if it's wrong, you want to know it's wrong. What was the file name we're using? Okay, so you have extra operations here. You can go from, say, 1 to 3, and then, let's say on the rows. Yeah, that'll be fine. And then in the row, row range, col range. What is this? Let's put something 5 to 10. That doesn't work yet. right? So you want one of these. Let's check what it says again. 2 more. Right, so what you wanted to do is you want to specify row minimum, row maximum, column minimum, column maximum. And then it'll be like, so here it would be 1 to 3 on the row, and then 5 to 10 on the column. That's what you want to do. And then all of these operations, so we could check the, I don't know, this. Do these values make sense? So 1 shifted by 1 is 2, 1 shifted by 2 is 4, that makes sense. All right, so that's homework 5, that's tonight, theoretically. So that means, in reality, what it really means is probably it will be graded Monday or Tuesday morning. So that's what it really means. I haven't been checking the dates. It's just when I grade it the first time, it's on time. All right, and then homework 6. So homework 6 was the conversion one, right? You want to call that Tuesday? And see how it is? That's fine. Is that all right? What does that really mean? That really means it's probably graded Wednesday or Thursday morning. So I would say a useful strategy for you if you're a late night kind of person, you can try to get it done by Tuesday and then just keep working on it until it's done. If that's your timetable, if you like to work till 2 or 3 a.m., that's fine. Just go ahead and do that. All right, any other questions about the homeworks? Does anybody else have one? We could look at 1 or 2 other ones just to see.
21.
We could check 21. That looks very similar to 34.
That less heading.
Yeah. Make this, you want to make,
Call range and call max and call range.
so this is 1 to 3 on both. What should I type here? That says,
Give it as a 2 or like maximum 10 and a row range 2 or something.
This isn't, trying to figure out. Yeah, so this, I don't know what's going on. Make it so that you have the rows together, the row min and max, and the column min and max together. I think that's easier to understand. Anybody else? Somebody that thinks they have it would be good. Anybody? Chelsea, do you have it? No? Abdul, do you have it? Do you have it? What about 0, 0 is always good to look at. Nothing there yet. Okay. Zero, 0 doesn't have the right name or something. What about 0, 1? I don't know. All right. Okay. Any other questions about those? I mean, so your starting point is first you copy the file, make sure it works. That's it, right? Make sure it works. And then I would do the operations second. That's pretty easy to add the operations. Make sure that they're actually working right. And then the extra 2 fields. Okay. And we should probably, and they have to check they'll have to pass the validators as well. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to do, this is sort of back towards the beginning, but to see what actually happens when you load a web page, we'll look at that data. So this telnet is the password for today, telnet cs.indstate.edu 80. First, I'm going to figure out Okay, so I just searched for HTTP example. In your browser, it says HTTP. That's the protocol that's going to be used, and what's actually happening is my computer sends a message to the server. Let's call this screen, I don't know, the server or whatever. So I'm over here, and I send a message that says, give me that file. And then the server sends it back. And there's a protocol for what the message is supposed to look like. So this is the first line that the browser sends. So I'm going to connect to cs.indstate.edu on port 80. That's the port for web, the default port for web. Okay, and I'm connected. So I can say get /jkinney cs601 valid page. And then there was something http /1.0 or 1.1 that says that I'm going to communicate you with these rules. Do I have a problem? But okay, so we can see what happened. I'm the browser, I sent this message. The server sent back, this was the response. So what the browser gets is this whole bit here. And we don't ever see this part, but the browser gets that, and that's extra information about the file. So you have just some response that says it's okay or not, that says that there was a problem in probably I typed it wrong or something. And then you have these, this is like attribute : property, kind of like CSS. And there's rule, the HTTP document says which ones of these are allowed and what they mean. So the server, the length probably is going to be the length of this, although it could be the length of the entire thing, including the header. And then it has a content type there as well. Let's try again. Let's try HTTP /1.0. Apparently I wasn't following the 1.1 rules. Alright, so interesting. Apparently looks different in (1.1). Here we go. Oh, okay. So I don't know. In the 1.1, it wanted the whole link. So in mine here, I don't have the cs.indstate part on there. Apparently they changed that in HTTP 1.1. I don't know. All right. So then we have the rest of this is header information and the file. So what the browser gets first is this. Then what would happen next? The browser gets this file. Then what happens before it gets displayed? Does it have enough information to display the file yet? Who says yes? Who says no? You have to vote. What other information could there be? So this is all that we have. This is our text file. So we just read this and we need to know how to display things. What do we need to know? We could display this already. What about this? What about the CSS? Do we have the CSS yet? I'm the web browser. All I have is what's on the screen. I don't have the CSS. Okay, so I have to go and get the CSS. So what you have, if you're going to draw a picture, you have the browser, you have the server. So first you send a message that says get HTML, right? Whatever that code is, that goes to the server. So the server responds with the HTML. The server doesn't look inside and say, you're also going to need the CSS file. All we did was we asked for the HTML file, so that's all it does. If you're going to write a browser, you need to know this. So we got that. So we would go back and say, get the CSS. And it would reply with the CSS. What if there was an image? If there was an image, then somewhere inside of the HTML, there would be an A tag or an image tag. So if we want to display the image, we would have to go and get the image. So we might say get JPEG, right? That's not valid HTTP code, but that's, and then the server would respond by sending the JPEG file. And when it responds sending the JPEG file, we probably wouldn't want to view it in Telnet because it's not text. But this part here, it would send back something in text with header information about what it is, and the content type would say image/JPEG or something like that. And then the rest of it would just be image data. And the browser would get that inside the browser when this, so this get HTML, what does that look like inside of the browser code? Inside the browser code, there's some like, are you doing files in 559? What do you use for files? Read? Read? Get S? Read? F something? So there's some function called read or get or fget or something. Well, it won't be fgetS because that's string. But so you're using some function call that reads from a file. The file you're reading from is a connection to the server. You can view that as a file. And you'd be reading into some array, right? You'd be reading into some spot in memory, and then that would be your HTML file. And if it's text, then you can use a string array, character array. If it's a JPEG, then you would use some like raw binary data array, and then you would have to do something with displaying the image. Okay, so that's what's actually happening. The next thing that would happen if we were the web browser, we would say get the CSS file. I typed it wrong. Whatever. No, not whatever. Let's. Does it always give an error on the first try? Oh no, I did have a mistake in there. Okay, so there's the CSS file. Oh, I didn't tell it. Notice the difference here. So this is one where I said this. And then here's the next one where I said this. I didn't tell it, in the first one I didn't tell it that I was using the HTTP 1.0 protocol. So what did it do? I guess it assumed some HTTP protocol because it understood the message, but it didn't send back headers. It just sent back the file. It's probably not the right way to operate. So here is, we get the headers and it gives text/CSS. We could see what happens if we try to, no, let's not. If I try to read an image, it's going to try and display the data, which is not ASCII, and it may mess up my terminal. So we won't do that. Okay, any questions or? And if you search for web browser server interaction and look at images, you probably see pictures like this showing that the browser makes a request, the server sends back the file. It goes back and forth. Let's just pause for a minute and you can discuss something like what you're doing for the weekend or whatever. All right, so do something. All right, we're ready. Questions or anything? Okay. So this is what we had last time. I fixed it so that it'll work. So hello world, if I click to send, it doesn't because I'm supposed to put the password in, which is Eclipse. So there's the text file. So all that this form is doing is it's going to read a text file and it's going to display it on the screen, and whatever I typed up here is going to be sent. So there are a few things that we had wrong before. The form is a form and it uses the same page as the action. And it's using get. So that means that everything that is typed in the form shows up here, including the password. So if you're doing a password, you probably don't want to use get for your form. But we're learning, so we want to use get. That way we can see what's up there. You can see how it did hello world with a plus. Fine, whatever. That way I can, because it can't put a space there. Right. So it does that kind of encoding, and all right. There's our form. We have the field set to do this nice little line, the legend to do this legend, and the text area. So we had input type equal text area. That's not a thing. Maybe you guys knew that and you're trying to tell me that, but you just didn't. So we had something like that, and that just is not a thing. So text area is, it's a thing, and then so the rows and the columns we can give as a parameter. Something else to fix is the max length is 1,000. If I change this to be max length to be 10, we can see what happens. So it just can't go any further, which is good, because we don't want them to fill up our server with junk. Okay, so we'll make that 1,000 again. Then we have the password. We had it as a text before. So if we make it text, then we'll see what's typed. It doesn't It doesn't cause any difference in terms of the PHP. It's just whether you can see the password or not. So you can make that whatever you want. Then down here, so if the password is set, and if the password is Eclipse, then so another check is whether the form was actually submitted. That should happen. There shouldn't be a password unless it was submitted, but I don't know why I put that in there, whatever. Then we put contents into the chat file. So chat file is chathistory.txt is the name of the file. Then, so I put that in, and whatever was in the text box, and I put a new line at the end that way. So that way, even if they don't type a new line up here, it'll kind of look okay. I suppose if you have computers, you could be typing in here and putting, like, I don't know, you could be putting comments about, you know, the class or something like this is really boring. Okay, so file append puts it at the end. If you didn't put file append, then it would overwrite every time. And lock ex, so what that's supposed to do is make this operation atomic. So what that means is, I'll put this in here. So lock ex makes the file write atomic. So when you do a file write, it really consists of 1, open the file, 2, write to the end, 3, close the file, or something like that. So atomic means all of that happens at once and shouldn't have an issue with someone else doing it at the exact same time. So you can have a problem if, so I open the file, you open the file, we're both at the same point. I write to the end, you write to the end, but we actually write to the same exact spot, and like somebody overwrites the other thing. That can happen. So this lock ex is supposed to prevent that. The whole thing happens at once. Only one person could be dealing with the file at a time.
So at that time we can't open the file.
No, it'll just wait. So if we both, you know, happen to hit submit at the exact same time, then somebody gets it first, and the other one just waits a millisecond. The user wouldn't notice. We could, so an interesting experiment would be write a program that repeatedly writes to the end of a file without the lock, and see if you can make it, you know, have problems. That'd be an interesting thing to try. Okay, another thing to note is that file append or lock ex. So that is the common way to group flags. So file append actually is, if you printed it, is some number like 8, and lock ex is some number like 16, a power of 2. So if you do file append or lock ex, that's a bitwise OR. That equals, well, the 8-bit is set and the 16-bit is set. So what would that number be? 24. Or in binary, you have the 16-bit, you have the 8-bit, you don't have the 4-bit, the 2-bit, or the 1-bit. And if you want to group it into, you know, 8 bits, it would be something like that. So this is a common thing, and normally if the flag is going to be things that you OR together, they'll be capitalized. That's just a convention. All right, if there was some other option we're going to add on, then we would just OR it on to the end as well. Okay, that's it for the writing, and then for showing it down below, we have, and here is what has been submitted, and then we just check the password again and get the contents and print it. There could be an issue. So what if I type HTML? So this is just going straight into the file. It actually made it HTML, but what if I put in there something like I put an end tag or something? That would probably be bad, right? Because then later on down here I have an end tag. So I probably don't want HTML tags in there. So there's two places where we could do this. One place is when they type it, we could convert it into like HTML is okay, or when we display it. It doesn't really matter. Let's just do it where we display it, because there's already some tags in there. And there was, does anybody remember there was a function to call? Anybody remember there's a function to turn the less thans into greater than codes? Anybody? It's in one of the slides. We could search for HTML escape or something like that. Let's try this. I don't know if this is the one that was in the slides, but we'll try this one. Okay, so that worked. That's good. And if you look at the source, what are you going to see instead of a less than? I know. Ampersand LT semicolon is instead of a less than. Ampersand GT greater than is instead of a greater than. Those are the, I don't know if it does some other special characters, but those are the main ones for HTML, so it won't be tags. Okay, so that's generally a thing that if you're letting them enter information that's going to show up in the web page, you want to always surround it with HTML special characters. So this would also do this for usernames, address, phone that get displayed, or check for it some other way. If we had our Google email and we could set our name that gets displayed and that shows in the page, we also want them not to be typing HTML in their username. Probably, let's save it as today, even though I already changed stuff. But so other things that are in, there's another thing to show you here. So originally, this file put contents S wasn't working, and the reason ended up being file permissions. So the user that's running this is Apache. The web server is called Apache. It has a name. It's Apache, and Apache did not have access. So let me change this. So if we look at ls-ltl chat history. This is the file that it needs to have access to, and if you look at it, I can read and write it, and the group users can read and write it, and everybody else can read it. So Apache cannot write it with the way it's set right now. There's another, so besides ls-l, there's more detail you can go into if you say get facl. This shows you more details. So get file access control list. It has to be enabled. It is enabled on ours. If you want me to put a note of that, let's say, do we have PHP validators? No. We will say useful commands. So I will say ls-ltr h that lists files with details sorted in reverse order by modified time with human readable sizes. So that is ls-ltr h. Human readable sizes are 2.0 kilobytes rather than showing you in bytes. And then it has the most recently modified on the bottom. If you want to sort them by LSRH, sorts by size. So the largest files on the bottom, if you want to look for the largest files in your directory. Okay, so there's those. Now we have get facl some file. We'll just do chat history. So that shows the access control list for the file. And for this one, we can see that the user that owns the file has read and write permissions. The user Apache has read and write permissions. The group that owns the file is readx, and I don't know what this mask does. And everybody else has r minus minus. So I can change this set facl chat history. Let's see, -m for modify, user Apache, I'll make it r, just r again. So now Apache just has read access just like everybody else, and it shouldn't work again. Modify ACL for Apache user, set access to read only. Okay, so then let's go over and make sure that it doesn't work. Something, whoops. And something did not get ended, did not get added. All right, so in trying to figure this out, I remembered this. So if I put these two lines, this one sets to report all errors, and this one sets to display errors that are reported. So with these two lines combined, if there's some error happening with one of the PHP functions, we'll see it. So I can say something oh, I'm on the wrong file. I changed the name. September 24th. Still not seeing that. Oh, it's I better change the action to this one. Let's make this password so I can see it. All right, now we're on the right page. Here we go. So this is the error. It's not a syntax error, but when I call this file put contents, it had an error in executing. It didn't finish correctly, and this is what it said: failed to open stream, permission denied, and that told me that I need to fix my file permissions. So then I can go and set facl-m for modify user Apache rw chat history.txt, and you can check to make sure that it actually worked. Then Apache has rw, and we can try this again. Now it worked. All right, so you don't want to have, you generally don't want to have this in like production code or something, because what are regular people going to think if they see some PHP warning? I don't know. But you could just for debugging purposes put it in. Let's say you should have a list of PHP. So that would go on your list of useful PHP stuff to remember. You should be keeping a better list than I am. Okay, so is there anything else we should do to this? What about making it so the file doesn't get too big? We should do that as well. If the file's already a certain size, then don't put onto the end of it. Right now we're not checking, we're just putting it on. So let us, what do we want to do? We want to check the slides for what function they're going to use, or we can just search. Let's just search, it's faster. File size. So by the way, this will say what all these functions, you'll have at the top what versions of PHP it works for. And I think we're running version 5 point something. But if you're not sure what version we're running, then you can, all right, PHP version, we could put somewhere. So I can print to the output. I can put in some HTML code to display it however I want to. This is a string. What does the dot do? Dot is concatenate, put two strings together. So if I want to print a bunch of things and one thing in the middle is a variable or the result of a function, then I have my strings and then dot. All right, so then if I run this, PHP version is 5.6.11. So that's another kind of debugging thing that you can remember. There were some other debugging things that we were supposed to remember. So PHP version, print R, some array. There was var dump. Some variable. That'll display any kind of variable, basic information about it. Okay, but we are going to file size. So file size is going to tell us the size in bytes, or false if it doesn't work. So we could say, before we do this, if size and size is less than max file allowed or something. So then we want to set some limit. Let's just set the limit to be a 10. All right, so if we set the limit to be 10, it should already be bigger than that. We can see how big it is. Right now it's 218 bytes. So if it didn't add to it, which is good. All right, so then if I change my limit to be 220, right now it's 218, it should work once and then not the second time. There it is. If I try it again, it didn't show up that time. All right, so we could set this to some hundred kilobytes is fine. Questions, comments, fun?
Why are we checking password twice?
Well, when it reloads the page, it didn't save the password. We could save the password if we want to. We could put that in. So the way that we save the password, so here we would say if, what is it, get password is set. Password equals get. So then in here we'd have to put it in. And then we could use it down below instead of, because we already got it. So there it saved it. That's one way to save it, is saving it in the form. What's like, how does Google remember that you're logged in so you don't have to type your password every time?
Single sign-on? Keychain?
You're just saying random words.
No, I mean, single sign-on is dependent.
Yeah, that's not how. How does it actually happen? How does it keep track of it in the code and whatever? That's the next topic. So we can look at that. We're allowed to. Come on. So we have PHP, file IO, query parameters, forms, get versus post, form validation. We haven't done that, but the next thing is cookies. So cookies is how. In our server code here, when we see the password, what we're supposed to, so one thing you can do is you can set a cookie in the browser, which is a little piece of information in the browser that says they already signed on. So that'll be the next thing. I haven't looked at this yet, but we can see what it looks like. Include files, fine. What is a cookie? So this is we could try this already. I haven't looked at it yet. Well, this will be the strategy. So the strategy is, this isn't exactly the final way to do it, but we check the password, and when we see that the password is correct, we want to, you can already try this in your own code. So you want to set a cookie like logged on to be yes, or something like that. So that says that they're already logged on, and then in the code, anywhere that you check the password, so you would check either the password or this cookie is set. And then you want to set some expiration time as well. Generally, or not, if you just want them to be logged on forever. So, but what could be the problem with that? So this would mean the server checks the password the first time, and then they tell the browser to keep something, so the browser would just keep something that says, so the browser cookie over here, there would be some logged on is true, or something like that. Could somebody access the site without knowing the password?
Session is on the same.
You could go and set cookies yourself. This is just a file on the computer. I mean, normal users don't do this, right? But it's possible. This is just sitting on the browser, and so they could, if they knew how we're checking things, they could just set a cookie, if they know what they're doing, that says logged on equals true, and then we would check it, and it would say that they're okay, even though we didn't check the password. So one extra thing that we could do is on the server, we could keep a list of computers that are signed on. So how do you keep a list of computers? How do you identify a computer? IP address is one way. So you could keep an IP address. I don't think I can go lower than that. That's one way to do it, but IP addresses change, right? So that is not, that's one way you could do it, but it's not quite there yet. put that over here. So instead, what tends to happen is, let's get rid of this. When the user types the password and they're okay, you generate a random string. So you're the one that's generating the random string. You send that back to the client, and you also keep a list of these strings. So then on the client, instead of logged on equals true, it would be authentication code equals some random stuff. And when the browser loads the page, when they ask for the page, they'll send this authentication code, and the server will then go and check and say, is this in my list? So could somebody get into the site without typing the password now? They would have to know an authentication code for somebody that did use the site. So they wouldn't be able to just put true. But if they get your computer and they go into the cookie and they copy it, then they could put it on their computer or something like that. That could still happen. So if you use a browser that saves that you don't have to log in, then there certainly is a way for people to go and copy information off your computer and be signed in on their computer. As an extra check, what will often happen is, so keep a list of strings and IP addresses, therefore. So that's an extra level of, so this authentication code matches the particular IP address that's on that computer. Although IP addresses can change and you can fake your IP address as well. So, all right, something. That's the basic idea. We could do that, or I could have you do it, or something. All right, let's take a pause and see if you have any questions or comments. So say something to somebody. Okay. Questions, comments? Cookie? Should we put the cookie in? We'll take a vote, and the function that we'll use to evaluate the ballots is the OR function. Okay, so should we put the cookie in? Who says yes? All right, then since we're using the OR function, that evaluates to true. All right, so what they're suggesting here, so the set cookie, they say that we should do this before anything's printed. Let's put it up here. We'll do our password checking up here above the HTML. So we need to make sure not to print anything up here. Okay, so first of all, the password could be set. So if the password is set, whoops. So if it's set and get password equals Eclipse. So if that's the case, then they're logged in. User is logged in equals true. All right, and we want to set a cookie, which they say we can just do like this. Why don't we we'll just save the password. So that's one thing that could happen. So another thing that could happen is the cookie could be set. So we'll leave it like this for now, and then we have to use this user is logged in later on instead of checking the password all the time. So we'll just put here user is logged in. So if the user's logged in, we still check to see if they submitted the form. If they submitted the form, then we're going to try and send stuff out. And then this one will only display if the user is logged in. Although, didn't we already check that? No. So, all right, let's see. If they're logged in, we'll display that. Let's see, because I'm not inside of an if. Let's do you are not logged in. You cannot see the secrets. Something like that. Is this going to work on the first try? No. Let's see what errors there are first. Line 10. Semicolon. Oh, okay, so otherwise I should also set user is logged in equals false. And also, before I check this variable, I'll go ahead and make sure that it's even existing. Is set. There we see the user is not logged in. That's good. All right, let's try it here now. we're not logged in. Let's type Eclipse. There's the history. Now, even if I type something like this, what will happen according to this logic? Let's get back to the file. According to this logic, if I type a wrong password when I already had a right one,
It'll take response.
so it's the password is set, the password is wrong, so this doesn't happen. The next one that's checked is the cookie set, and is the cookie set correctly? It still is. So then it'll still be all right. I don't know. If we want to leave them logged in, probably the right thing to do is not show the password. All right, so we should just go down here where the password is and get rid of it. If not user logged in. That's just for the password. So if they're not logged in, we'll give the password as an option. Otherwise, we won't. We just need to make sure that we only use the password field. This will still be all right. Okay, let's see now. Start over. Okay, I have a wrong variable name here. How are you going to know you typed a wrong variable name? If something's not working, go and put this stuff at the top of your code. So you'll see errors. I should see an error here. Undefined variable. All right. So you can first, before you do that, maybe you'll just know, but user is. Ooh, look at that. Okay, so now the password field's not showing up. And according to these guys over here, if we do it like this, the cookie will get deleted when we close the browser, so they'll have to type the password again when they open the browser. If they leave the browser open forever, it'll be good forever. If we want it to stay longer, then we can do this business where we add an expiration time, like a week or whatever. All right, so that's the end of today, and you have PHP homeworks to work on, and if you had inline style in your homework 4, get it out before I grade it. The end. If you have any questions, you can
So like
come up.
when in the browser